All right, so in today's episode, we are going to be talking about properties. So properties are essentially different things that we can do with numbers. We're not actually solving, but we have to know some rules with numbers. So the first property we're going to talk about in this first box is the commutative property. So let's spell that. It has two M's, commutative. Okay, so I like to kind of think of this as your community, because commutative kind of sounds like community. It means the order of adding and multiplying. I'm kind of run out of room there. The order of adding and multiplying can be switched. And when we do switch it, the answer doesn't change. So an example of that would be like 3 times 2. What's 3 times 2? It is 6. So if I switch that, what's 2 times 3? It's still 6. So when I say community, I mean, if you're in a community, that's the people around you. So if we can switch, then we're good. So 3 times 2 is the same as 2 times 3. Doesn't matter. Same with adding. What's 3 plus 2? 5. What's 2 plus 3? Still 5. So you can switch the order of adding and multiplying. We know that we cannot switch subtracting because 2 minus 1 is 1, but 1 minus 2, we just have been talking about that a lot. We can't do that. That would be -1. So we cannot do that. And division would be cowboy and horse, and we know we cannot switch our cowboy and horse. So it only works for adding and multiplying. So let's see how that would actually be tested. So which expression is equivalent to 6 times W plus 3? So this is what we're starting with, okay? So if I'm thinking about what I would start to solve, I would do my group. And inside my group, I have multiplication. So that's what I would have to solve first in all of my answer choices. So in A, we have 6 times W, which those match exactly perfectly. So that's not what I wanted to do. So I have 6 times W, 6 times W. Those are exactly the same. So I'm going to go to B. We have W times 6. And we just discussed, can we switch multiplication? Yes, we can. So that is still okay. But on C, there are no parentheses, but I would still multiply before I add. So that one completely changed what we are multiplying. And this one I'm doing 6 times W, and this one I'm doing 3 times W. So that one is out. And in D, my parentheses has adding first. So I can't go from multiplying first to adding. So D is out as well. So now I'm back to A and B. So back to what we are starting with. So outside, I have a plus 3. So on A, I have a 3 minus. B, I have a plus 3. So obviously A, we can't change adding to subtracting. So B is my final answer there. Okay, and that's all we're doing. Equivalent means match, so find your match. It's in a different order, but that's okay. All right, second property we are going to talk about is associative. Okay, so associative. Okay, and it doesn't really matter if you remember the name of the property as long as you know what's happening. So if our whole problem, so the whole problem has adding, we see a trend here, or multiplying. So if that is the only thing that is happening, you can move the parentheses and change the order. Okay, you can move them. So what I mean by that is if I have 1 plus 2 plus 3, okay, I can put parentheses in there. So I would do 1 plus 3 first, which is 5, plus 1 is 6. Okay, so if I have 1 plus 2 plus 3, but on this one, I put the parentheses here, 1 plus 2 is 3, plus 3 is also 6. So it doesn't matter where the parentheses are because we're adding everything. So we can do it in whatever order we want. Same with multiplying. So let's change it to multiplying. 1 times 2 times 3. Okay, let's put the parentheses in the front this time first. So 1 times 2 is 2 times 3 is 6. So 1 times 2 times 3. Let's put the parentheses in the back this time. Okay, if I solve 2 times 3, 6 times 1 is still 6. So if it's all multiplying, we can flip it, or we can change the parentheses. So let's see how we would see it tested. So which expression is equivalent to this right here? So notice we have adding and adding. So we can move the parentheses wherever we want, but we can't change adding to something else. So in A, it now has a random multiplication. That is not equivalent. It's not going to be the same thing. B has 2 multiplications. C, again, has another multiplication. No good. D has all adding, so D is our answer. It is that simple, okay? We can't change adding to multiplications because they all still have a 53, a 16, and a 7. So they didn't solve anything, they just moved the parentheses, okay? All right, last one. So this is what we call the inverse property. Okay, inverse property is multiplying by a flipped fraction, which is the inverse, okay? And if you multiply by a flipped fraction, it equals 1. So what I mean by that is if I have 1/2 times, and if I flip that and make it 2 over 1, well, let's think. Top times top, 1 times 2 is 2. Bottom times bottom, 2 times 1 is 2 as well. And 2 halves equals 1 whole. Okay, let's think of another one. 3 over 2 times, flip it, 2 over 3. So that would give me 6 and 6, which equals 1 whole. So how this would actually be seen on the star. Which expression is equivalent to this right here? So I have subtracting, and then what's happening right there between that fraction and that number? That is multiplying. So I would have to multiply first. Now, some of you might be wanting to turn that fraction into a decimal, which is fine, but I'm actually going to make that for a fraction, and I'm going to do 1/4 times 4, and whole numbers go over 1, and then I get 4 over 4, which equals 1 whole. So I have, if I rewrite, I have W minus 1 whole, which is indeed B. So if you look at C, they completely like rearranged all the things, which is not a thing. D, they got 3/4 somehow. And then A was W minus 0, so somehow they got a 0, so that is also not correct. And that is properties.